Oh, yes, you're right. Thank you. So, I'd like to invite Joel Bavaclia from the People's Pen, and he's going to come up and give a short presentation on what they're doing up there in Coeur d'Alene and Kootenai County, and invite us to join. So, would you welcome Joel?
Hello, everybody. My name is Joel Bavaclia, actually, and I'm from Kootenai County. I'm the ad manager of the People's Pen, and this is Hari Heath. He is the writing manager of the People's Pen, and well, we are here. For those that aren't familiar with the People's Pen, we're a liberty conservative related newspaper in Kootenai County, and well, I had to write this last night, so I might have to read it, so this goes pretty quick. But we're basically here to present a plan that we think could help the committee's goals for the May primary. So in Kootenai County, the People's Pen has been a really effective counterpoint to the mainstream media. And our advertisers have had really remarkable success up there. For example, the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee, which is one of our biggest advertisers, won 25 out of 25 races last primary in 2022. And in 2022, in about a year's time, they printed up about 300,000 copies of the People's Pen in 4 mailings that went to every resident in the county. And these are an example of the two of those issues. And if you want to see them, just raise your hand and Hari will give you one to check out. And then basically, because of that, Brent Regan, the chair of the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee, said that the People's Pen was the best bang for their buck as far as getting their candidates to win. So other areas, other counties have asked us to somehow help them replicate the success that was had up north. And the problem is most of them don't have a lot of money. So, so what we've done is we came up to a plan to address this, because the opponents really to a lot of the counties have a lot of money to spend, and they think that they're just going to outspend, control the narrative, and just basically take control of Idaho. So to deal with this, we constructed a plan called the Idaho Republic. And it's a new newspaper similar to the People's Pen, but more, I guess you could say, Republican-oriented, whereas the People's Pen is kind of a little bit more populist-oriented. And we wanted to kind of get a whole bunch of different counties in on this plan, and so we constructed a demo of the paper, which is here. My lovely assistant showing it off here. And
my name's Banner.
The theme is let's keep the republic, because as conservatives, that's what we're trying to do. So, so our idea for this was to go into 2 steps. We were going to have a caucus step and a primary step. We figured that, well, all the voters are going to show up at the caucus. So rather than spending tens of thousands of dollars on mailing copies to everyone, there's 197,000 residences in Ada. So if we did that 4 times, it would get very expensive. So we figured, since people were showing up at the caucus, who you know are going to vote anyway, we'll have the first edition of the paper printed up and given to all the people that are at the caucus. And so this new newspaper, it would be of general Republican interest. It would be a little bit edgy, as we're known to be sometimes, but not too much.
We're basically in a war, so we kind of have to deal with reality.
Yeah, a little bit. And so So the cool thing about this is the candidates get a head start in the primary race, and a lot of the costs for the paper can be shared amongst multiple counties. And any leftover copies can be used for door knocking. Then the second step of that plan is basically just a mass mail out of the second issue. This is more primary related to 197,000 houses in Ada County. And so we get to how much it will all cost. We figure step one would cost Ada County $11,400 and would get about 15,000 copies to all the caucuses. Could be a little bit more depending on how much everyone thinks we need, but we figured 10%. And along with that, Ada County, we were thinking the Central Committee could actually dictate 4 pages of content, basically like paid advertisement in the paper, 4 pages, and that could, that could cover like what happened at the Lincoln Day. It could be a call for donations. It could be interviews with candidates, links, bringing attention to websites that might tell more of the story of what Ada County is experiencing. Those are just some of the ideas to do with the 4 pages. Then, step 2, okay, here's a little sticker shock here. The estimated cost for step 2 is about $66,400. But that's printing and mailing to 197,000 houses. So what we figured to make step 2 more affordable is that any additional advertising we would get in the caucus paper, we could roll over into the primary paper, the primary mail out. So that could help offset the costs. Now, if you don't decide to do that, then we would just keep that money. But otherwise, it's going to roll over into the vast cost of mailing and printing for step 2. So we're here basically to bring up the subject of basically asking the ACRCC to consider advertising with the Idaho Republic, a new paper that the People's Pen is making. In step 1, the cost is $11,400. That would be at least 15,000 copies for all the caucus locations and 4 pages of pure Ada County Republican Central Committee content.
Plus, anybody who's a candidate or even a business owner, this is going to be going out statewide, not to every county, but we're working with about 10 counties trying to accomplish this. And so all that advertising revenue is what gets rolled over. It's a way to get your message out directly to voters. And for those of you that actually like the job of being a PC, well, unfortunately in party rules, the Central Committee cannot recommend PCs. But this is an opportunity for a PC to put in, say, a business card side ad, and you can advertise through this and get your message out to all around the state, actually, is where this paper's going, but it's another opportunity.
And if you decide to actually go with the step 1 plan, at least the caucus paper, we're asking you to appoint a liaison that works between the People's Pen and the ACRCC. Dan?
I noticed the Keep the Republic, a good friend of ours that most people know, Daniel Babinski, has a radio podcast and it's called Keep the Republic. Have you thought to contact him if there's a situation that may be copyrighted or something, or trademarked?
Yeah, there's one of the things that we do is we promote all the different radio podcasters.
Okay.
And so up north we have a guy who does Idaho Speaks, and we usually have about 10 or 12 interviews that he's done, and we'll have the QR codes, we'll have the links. So what happens is when people get the paper, they start going through it, and then they're introduced to all the other media that's in your area and relevant. So it kind of keeps people's attention on what the liberty conservative movement wants people to pay attention to. Because if they're like on Twitter or X, or they're on Instagram or Facebook, they get distracted by 18,000 other things. So one of the functions of the paper is it helps ground all the other media and promote all the other media. So.
And it's been a popular phrase since 1787, so good to copyright.
Yeah, it's not really a copyrightable.
I remember coming up with it actually.
Yeah, there was some guy named Ben Franklin, and it was kind of the whole thing.
Okay.
His people got in touch with us. Yes?
I have a question. Idaho has a law, of course, against electioneering at polling places. I don't know if this applies to a caucus.
No, it doesn't apply to a caucus, actually.
So I'm curious. I like newspaper, the feel. I'm an old guy. What about those younger caucus attendees or things like that might look at it? I mean, do you have an online version, something like a QR code or something like that to get that out?
It's kind of been with the People's Pen, we're trying to revive print.
Okay.
We have a web page, but it's really how to access subscriptions, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
We don't really try to be another blog source. We're trying to revive print.
And
As
then-
you know, it's a really nice thing to hold in your hands.
Sure, I am. But second question is that 15,000 copies that you're looking at, is that based on what the estimated attendance of the caucuses will be?
Yes.
We have refined this process down in bunches of stages to try to bring it into a spectrum of affordability. We had a multi-stage thing that we've honed down, and we did have like a 38% of the Republican electorate figure, but that was still kind of spending. We've dropped it down to 12%.
Okay.
And for example, if your county decides you want more than that, we need an order soon, an amount. That's kind of what we're asking, but we're proposing this, and we're working with about 10 other counties to get something to happen.
Right. The more you print, the cheaper it gets. It's just a lot of counties are figuring 10%. Some are saying 15 to 30. But we figured Ada would probably be a 10% turnout. Maybe we're wrong. If you think we're wrong, then we can always print more. By the way, I have a copy of the latest issue. I'll pass these down. You can pass them out, and if people still want more and we don't have enough, we'll bring some more from the car. So you go. Pass these out. Any other questions? Yes.
I just want to say you two have boots on the ground, and I applaud you very much, and thank you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, we've caused a lot of stir up in Kootenai County. It's been a lot of fun, that's for sure. And occasionally, the Idaho Capital Sun down here talks about us too. That's always interesting. But I wanted to address one of your concerns. Again, you were talking about online stuff and how the younger people might be more into stuff on their phone or whatnot. Well, that's partially true, but the main advantage of print is that it creates a synergy with all your other media.
Joel.
Because all the other media is a little bit ephemeral, I guess you could say.
Joel,
Yep.
You need to speak into this. They can't hear you in the back.
Oh, okay.
There you go, just like that.
Okay, the issue we were talking about was the role of print in the modern day media landscape. And what we found is print acts as a synergy with your other media. So in the old days, if you were trying to sell washing machines, you would take out a radio ad, or you'd take out a newspaper ad, or you'd take out a TV ad. And if you only did one of those, your advertising wouldn't do too good. But if you got, say, a radio and a newspaper ad, you had a great sale. So the same kind of thinking goes on today, and that's, I think, why we've been fairly effective, is that the print almost acts as a foundation where your information sticks, basically. People can always pick it up, go back to it. The paper is not beeping at them. You're not getting notifications from your kids or anything. You're just sitting down there and you're reading. And so it's a great way to make sure that the message you're trying to convey sticks with your audience. Any other questions?
One of the things that worked in Kootenai in 2022 was we basically, the whole committee did full spectrum dominance, and the People's Pen was part of it. We were the print media, but by engaging television, radio, really good ground game, extra things that got mailed, that's how we got 25 out of 25 of our recommended candidates elected in 2022. We're only planning to be, or hoping to be, part of what you guys do. There's still all the rest of the ground game, everything. But we're a foundational thing, and when I like to use the term carpet bomb, when we carpet bomb every household in a county, that lays a foundation of information that's out there. They're used to, the Iowa Statesman and other fairly despicable organizations. We're here to counter that. So we're only a component of everything else you guys have to do.
All right. Thank you for your time and consideration.
All right. Next up, we have the treasurer's report. Let's see if you would come get that.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. I wanted to start with just one change to the P&L for the Christmas event. I got some late receipts, but those were incorporated into it. But overall, we did great. It was $8,959.20. So another great job for Sandy and Dawn and Cheryl, and who am I missing? Laurel? Yeah, it was great. And Sue Gaston also, and she's gone. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there and make sure we all knew that we did a great job on that one. And thank you for everybody that showed up and contributed. We have to do an annual report, and unfortunately because of the financial review, we pushed it off to this month. So this is the just the compiling of all the, there we go. And I think that's focused. So just wanted to go through how we did in 2023. So if you look at what our total revenue, and ultimately it's really just donations that came in through AMIDOT, any kind of events that we did, and also very small interest, and that comes from our savings deposit. So for the year we did $109,000 and $288.45. So the next part is we're looking at the cost of goods. Those are t-shirts, caps, and mugs that were sold at the fair. And we did do a cost of that for that part was $5,628.64. The rest is expenses, so that's different because it's just really the what we're using our money on. So if you go down through them, we've got an anecdote fee. Let me see if this guy works. So we've got, let me see right here. So the anecdote merchant fee, that was 1,700. I can't see all of it, so I'll just do the first two numbers. And then we do an anecdote PPD. To be perfectly honest, I don't know what that is. That was done in the beginning. Veritetlo expenses, that was, and then we have the domain name purchase for GoDaddy. That was a recent addition for $35. We did do a Facebook ad for $659. First class cleaning, the post-election headquarter cleaning for $282. And then internet service for Sparklight, I think there was some kind of an auction that we did. And that was $460. We did incur some legal fees for $2,200. Liability insurance, it's an insurance that we pay on an annual basis for $339.8. We do a MailChimp subscription, and the monthly fee is $100, and that was an $800. It was started in March of last year. The meeting room rental, it cost us to actually meet here. So that was where did it go? There it is, 2,000.
940.
Okay, thank you. And then PO Box annual rental fee. We actually do have a actual PO Box at the Eagle Post Office, and that was $210. We incurred some postage, that's just regular mailings, $45.30. We also did QuickBooks, and it is a monthly subscription, and it was a total of $825.
You skipped office supplies.
What?
You skipped office supplies, okay.
Okay. So this is the second page of expenses. So we go down to, there we go. We did a refund of donations that totaled $10,950. That's when people ask for a refund, and that was done. Sales tax, we do sales tax on a quarterly basis. So every 3 months, any merchandise that we sell, even at our auctions, any of that, we do pay sales tax on it. Oh, well, thank you. Okay. The rest are going to be special event. So Ada County Expo, that's the fair. So that was $5,642.35. I guess I need to get better glasses. Oh, thank you. Thank you for my assistant. Special event for the Ada Expo, we did that. Special event for auction event, that was $479. Special event for the Boise Hawks, $1,911. Special event Burgess Owens, that was $24,945. Special event, the Christmas event, primarily the food that was in there, $3,002.35. Special event, the Crane Creek Lincoln Day, and that was $1,350 or 5. Special event Crane Creek Reagan Club, $1,027. Special event Voter Guide Atlas, that was $575. That Atlas was the company that we used. Then we actually have state dues. $31,933. Storage unit, that's done on an annual basis. That's incorrect. Yeah, the storage unit should only be 810. And then finally, there was a strip transferred of 750. To my knowledge, that was a double pay that Strip actually gave to us, and that was a refund for that. So then there was expenditures by Travis Clyde, and that was $6,070.06. Victory tax, and that was $1,385. So our total expenses for 2023 was $132,029.77. If you look at the total cost, that means that I've added the cost of goods and expenses. That's $158.41. So we did a net loss for 2023 of $28,369.96. I do have.
Does that include that $8,000 here though?
Yeah.
What?
The $8,000, is that total including because of the oops?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'll read
Yeah,
that.
questions come, we'll
Oh, I'm
answer
sorry.
questions right after she's done with her report.
Okay. So this is really just the monthly look. So if anybody really wants to take a look at how we did every month, that's what this document will show. So this is January 2023. It's all 23. So this is what we did in January, February, and March, April, May. That's the first part of the amount. Yeah, they're all 2023. And then this is where you actually get the actual for the month. So for July, August, September, October, November, and then December. So I will have to go back and correct that one entry. Yeah.
Can we make requests for corrections?
Pardon me?
Can we make requests for corrections? Can we make requests for corrections?
Sure.
So, Madam Treasurer, I noticed in the report that you had an indication of a Lincoln Day event that was held at Crane Creek Lunch Club. I just respectfully, as one of the board members for the Lincoln Day Association, we don't have any association with the ACRCC. It is a separate entity of its own. And we did not do an event under the ACRCC at Crane Creek. And so I would ask to have it amended that not reflect to have anything to do with the Lincoln Day Association, because that in fact did not occur. There was an event at Crane Creek that was
Can I clarify that for you more?
Yeah,
That was for the Lincoln Donor Club.
but it was not
Not
Lincoln.
Lincoln Day,
It's
right,
not
not
Lincoln Day.
Lincoln
Okay. Okay, I'll make that correction. Yes.
Okay, on your list of expenses, annual expenses, it looked like you accounted for the cost of goods sold twice. Could you go back to that sheet?
The cost of what twice?
Cost of goods sold.
Oh, okay.
Cost.
Steve, you wanna hop in here, bud?
Hang on, I'm all out of order. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, so let me go ahead and tell you what I did. So if you look at,
Up there where you say special events Ada County, that's called.
okay. So what I do is, this is a total for the cost of goods sold. That value is then added to that value, the 132,000.
But if you go back up the list, not that one, the other one. The one where you, up there near the top, right there. Isn't that the same amount that you're talking about at the bottom? That you added back in?
For the, no, it's different.
That's the same number as you had on the other sheet for cost of goods sold.
No, the cost of goods sold was $5,628.64.
642.
And then this one is $5,628.64.
Okay.
But- Okay, so.
There were
so
different
they-
receipts that I looked at.
Okay.
I mean, those totals were different receipts.
Okay, I'm still,
I can check. I mean,
a
it's,
little confused about it because I see the numbers are the same, but the cost of goods sold was related to those items that you were selling at the fair.
mhm.
And then you have the fair expenses there. Those are separate charges, separate expenses.
So I'm basing it on the information that I've got, because this happened before my time. And unfortunately, some of the records are not really good. But ultimately, you know, how I did this is just looking at receipts and then gathering them into whatever item that they were supposed to be. Like, one of the things for the fair that was not a cost of goods was tickets for volunteers.
Okay.
Steve?
We had tickets for volunteers to get in and work. You have to actually pay for your volunteers to come in. I don't know why, but you do. We had the rental space for the booth itself. We had other decorations and materials to put around the booth other than what we were selling.
Okay,
So while the numbers are close, they probably are both accurate.
very good, thank you.
Okay. Any other, Laura?
Yeah, I noticed that there were two rather large expenses that you had on there. One was to Mr. Tetlow for $5,500, and then I saw one payable to Travis Clyde for over $6,000. You know, they're both executive board members, both resigned. Is there some accounting of that money, and why would our executive board members have those kind of expenses that we as a central committee were not aware of?
The information I have is based on checks that were written to them, and
Reimbursement checks.
Yeah. So that, I mean, it's basically a canceled check, so you can get a copy of that from the bank, and on the memo line, it'll state what it's for. So that's how that number was generated. There is no documentation that indicates exactly what that was for, other than expenses.
Let me just get to that.
Sure.
It's actually in QuickBooks, those are reimbursement for expenses. And so if you go into QuickBooks, it breaks it out into each of the categories. So this is reimbursement for expenses that they incur. Spell out QuickBooks, and so that's spelled out in each of the categories in the budget line item.
And to reframe my question, so I guess the reframe of the question would be is, when you have a treasurer who has a checkbook and who has a debit card, why would there ever be a circumstance where we have two executive board members that have expenses exceeding over $5,000 apiece for reimbursement? Why would we ever be in a position where we're reimbursing that kind of money versus it having been an expense brought before the executive board or the central committee, an approved expense, and then they've gone through the treasurer, okay, who would have had to require, like an invoice or receipt because they paid for it with either a check from our account or from our credit card versus unknown reimbursements to an executive board member.
So I'm going to defer that question to the next speaker. Yeah.
Hey, so what I'm going to ask is that if we can change the statement as a reimbursement of my expenses, because the reality is if you put it as that, I'm going to get 1099, I'm going to get taxed on something that I got reimbursed on. So this is going to be basically, I personally received money from the state county, which I did not. They turn in receipts, turn in copies, whatever I come up with documents that was required by the treasurer and the executive board, with all the amount of copies and boxes of paper that I have written every meeting. Even a request by our own secretary here. Last minute, make copies here, make copies there. I mean, I can bring all those emails in if you want, but I would ask that we restate that as a reimbursement expense, not an expense to me personally. And it's a cumulative, expense, not a full one check expense.
So
Those
that's,
2 points are, it's an accumulation for an annual total of several. And yes, anything written to a PC is not a payment
no.
for services. It is a reimbursement of expenses.
Okay, and please make sure that's noted in QuickBooks, because
It is in QuickBooks.
okay, that's what I want to make sure. So I want to get the audit, I get audited, and we have a big problem. I'd rather just do it.
Huge.
Exactly. Thank you.
Huge.
Any other questions on? So I was also asked to do a budget versus actual, and that's for 2023. So again, it's I'm looking at the income of 109,288.45 cents. The expense was 137,658. And profit and loss, the loss was 28,369.96 cents. The budget for 2025 was income of 112 and 500, a difference of 3,211 and change. For expenses, the budget was 130,835. So we were over that budget by 6,823.41. And then looking at the profit versus budget, we were off by 10,034.96 cents.
Point of clarification though, again, on those budgeted end numbers, I'm gonna assume those spreadsheets tie so that 8,000 versus $800 trend typo would reflect, that would be changed on the totals there too.
Yeah.
So, that's a $7,000 roughly difference if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'll change all that.
Yeah.
Any questions on that?
All right.
No, one more.
What's that?
I still have more.
You have one more.
Sorry.
Never mind. I will sit back down. You go ahead.
So I like to do a P&L for the month. So this is the P&L for our month of January. The revenues were $1,895.58 from Anadoc, and then one check for $200. So a total that we received this month of $2,095.58.
See, that says 2023.
No, this is 2024.
Okay, well, it says 2023.
Oh, shoot. That's how much work it was. Anyway, 2024, this January, last month. I also did a transfer from savings of 500 or 5,000. If you look at the expenses now, this is the month that we pay our annual rental for the storage unit. Again, $816 instead of $810, sorry. We do an Amazon Prime membership for $143.58. We do the Anadoc fees, and that it shows at $56.78. There was a little bit of tweaking that I had to do on that because a lot of the entries, I couldn't get the actual fee for it. But I think that's probably like $1.12 more less than what it really is. And my problem right now is that, my problem with that is that this is February 1 and nothing closes until the end of the day today. So I couldn't get the actual numbers today. So there will be a recommendation with my next speaker to change when we meet so that the treasurer has enough time for everything to close before we actually do this meeting. So that might be the only issue on this page. And I'll check that again. The Caucus School Facility Rental. So we are doing the Caucus. That was our first payment for the school facility rentals, and that was $10,337.47. We do MailChimp, and MailChimp is $100 a month. The meeting room, $294 for meeting here. Then we had office supplies of $12.18. We had QuickBooks for $45. And then we do sales tax because we do pay once a quarter, but for fourth quarter 23, it's due the end of January. So we did incur a sales tax of $31.20. And then the special events that, for receipts that came in late, we paid those. We also do the US Postal Box annual cost. That goes out in January, and that was $210. So if you look at what we brought, the total of expenses versus what we brought in, it's a difference of $10,098.45. Steve.
The 143 and change for the Amazon Prime membership, my understanding is that you asked the executive board for that because that will allow you to use the debit card and control the purchases. So we no longer have, I don't want to speak for Dave, but I'm pretty sure his experience was the same as mine. Lots of Amazon receipts coming in for reimbursements, and this moves out of the reimbursement and into the treasurer's paying bills.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I want to thank you for taking that step.
And it's important too because we can't commingle our funds. So if we're using somebody else's credit card and then there's confusion, that whole thing. So it's just a lot easier. The request I have is if you do need anything from Amazon Prime, you give me the link, justification. We also have a debit request form, and then get approval on that as well. And then we'll have that merchandise sent to you, especially for this caucus. We're having to do that. It'll go directly to that address, not mine. Okay, and then finally, the balance sheet. Again, I haven't been able to reconcile anything, but ultimately, this is just a comparison of 3 months as per our bylaws. And so we're looking at November, December, and then January of 2024. The income and expense difference between December and January, and then looking at the budget versus actual. And right now, we don't have a budget. I think Scott's working on that. And that's what it looks like. Any questions? It's a lot to take in, so.
You mentioned a possible need to move back the monthly meeting day, apparently for closing purpose. How much time are we talking?
I'll let Brian talk to that. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, Chair recognizes Holly Hill. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a motion. I just wanted to move that we require any video broadcasts or public communication of our meetings to be pre-approved by either the executive board or the body. I think there's really, especially a review like this that's in depth, this is a private organization, and we don't want to broadcast this kind of information to our competitors. I think politely we would ask for all broadcasting and communication to cease, and it's required.
So let me clarify, are you asking for executive session, or do you want to make a rules motion?
I just want to make a motion to require that for every meeting moving forward.
So that would come into the new business section to do that? Okay? All right?
Yeah, executive session.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Yes, Chair.
I have rights to point privilege.
Yes.
I move that we do go into executive session for this report.
Okay. Is there a second on that? Okay, there has been a there's been a motion made to go into executive session and a second. We'll now take argument for and against. If you are for making that, going into the executive session, come stand over here. If you're against, come stand over here. We'll do some quick debate.
We will have,
Okay. Mr. Johnson, if you'd like to come up and actually.
We don't have the other mics tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
My motion is related to the fact that, for one, I expect this to be a sensitive report. Secondly, the executive committee has not seen this report. We don't know what's in there. We know who did it, who did the report. We're all anxious for it, but it behooves us to hear the report, and everybody that's in the committee will hear the report if we go into executive session. But I don't think it's proper that we broadcast this out to the public at this time. We've got the reputation of the entire Republican Party, especially here in Ada County, that's at risk. Our opponent is the Democrat Party. We should try to protect as much as we can. We know there's probably some damning stuff in this, but let's do it responsibly. So that's why I'm for executive session.
All right. Argument for going, or against going into executive session. Go ahead. Jensen.
I bet some people are expecting me to impugn some people's motives right about now, but actually, no. In fact, Mark, I love you. I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying there, but however, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and things get a little dark when we kick people out.
All right, any more argument in favor of going into executive session? All right, Mr. Davis?
Can I just say it here?
They can't hear you. No, they can't hear you.
Okay, yeah, they can't hear you if you don't.
You can't be loud.
I'll be super quick. We've already had several reports already, the financial reviews. This is the final one. We didn't go into executive session then. We want to be public about this. We want people to know that Ada County is trying to do the right thing. I think this should absolutely be public and not an executive session. All right, any other argument for going into executive session?
Good evening, everyone. This has been a long process for all of us, and I know everybody's wondering what's going on and they want this information. But if you recall, when we actually went into executive session, when Laura Morgan made the motion on a prior occasion, we actually had to pick a different day. So I would like to see us do it here and now while keeping everything respectful and having any guests or reporters and have them to leave the room. I think this is a sensitive matter, and I think we need to respect everyone in this room. And I think we can do that in executive session. Thank you.
All right. And then are you against? All right, here we go.
Here we go. Hi, this has been a long, drawn-out process. As you know, I am, or was, on the executive board. Then we were all removed from the executive board, and now we're back on the executive board. So I say this is the time to let the chips fall where they may and bring out the truth of what's going on. If we go into executive session, someone's going to talk about what happened in executive session. I don't care who you are or what you say, it will be revealed. So now is the time to open the doors, let everybody see what's going on. I don't think this is going to damage our party. This is going to show that we are going to tell the truth and be transparent. That's what we need. We need to clear this up once and for all. And I say, let's do it tonight. While we have guests here, while we have people here, let's be open and transparent. That's what we've all been screaming about and wanting. So I say, bring it on. Light dispels the darkness. Thank you.
Argument for or against?
Yes. Not for or against, but just to clarify, the previous motion was for the committee to report back to us. Somebody mentioned it hadn't even gone to the executive board yet. The executive board is not in that process. In our bylaws for the Financial Review Committee, they report back directly to the Central Committee. And they were not a part of the process when we made the motion for this committee for the special review. So while the executive board has not seen the report, they're not required to see it. And in fact, the bylaws took them out of the process when they were amended in 2021.
All right, any other debate?
Just a question. Just to clarify for everybody, because somebody mentioned executive session at a different time, the motion is to go into executive session immediately, correct?
Yes, the motion, to clarify, this motion is to go into executive session immediately. All right, any other debate? All right.
Information is, can you clarify for everybody who would be involved in?
Yes. Yes, I'll clarify that. So if we go into executive session, it means that only voting members can be present, that everybody else will have to clear the room while we have the discussion on the finance review.
Alternates who are here with their PC may also stay.
Alternates who are here may also stay, but it's just.
Even if their PC is here.
Even if their PC is here. All right? Okay. Seeing that there's no more debate, let's call the question. All those in favor of going into executive session, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, say no. No. The noes have it. All right. So here we go for the finance review.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
Do you have anybody
who's asking the question, could they please stand up? So I don't know if we're supposed to hear the question and you're just supposed to answer it out with the process, but we can't hear the question.
Okay, yes.
So I don't know if I should ask one afterwards.
Okay, yeah, so the request is if you're standing, or if you're making a motion, or if you're asking a question, if you could stand so that everybody can hear it. And I will try and repeat the question too, so that you guys can know what's going on. All right, so we're now going to hear the results of the financial review. Brian Merrill is going to give those results. But before he does, I want to say a couple of things about this. One, this financial review committee, while I have not had the chance to review the full report, I do know the work that was done in the middle of creating it, and there was quite a bit of communication. And I can tell you that the financial review committee did a really phenomenal job of keeping it balanced, keeping it factual, and keeping it evidence-based, which is what everything always needs to be when we do these sorts of reviews. This is extremely serious business. And I'm going to be really tough on keeping order here, because this can get very emotional. I want you all to know I'm going to be on both sides, both those who support the financial review and those who don't, because this is serious business, and as a party we need to represent well what we are doing, and we need to set an example that we can broadcast to the community of how we handle issues that come up that are sensitive. So that's going to be my ask of you, is that everybody do things in order. If you have questions, once the report starts, by the way, there are no interruptions allowed until the report is finished. Mr. Merrill will take any questions after that, and then we can have discussion. If you have motions to make, that will come in the new business portion of our agenda, okay? Yes, Mrs. Holly Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of order. Motion's in order anytime. So anybody can make a motion anytime. I understand you don't want to report it. That's fair.
Yeah.
We respect that. But I would like to renew the motion that all broadcasts cease now, and that we protect the integrity of this report. It's totally fine if people are here, but we have no need to broadcast it out to the Democrats. So that's the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I object to consideration of the question, and with the new addition of Robert's Rules of Order, I believe I am allowed to explain myself.
Steve?
Yep.
All right, you are. Go ahead.
This is essentially the same question that was just been asked. Therefore, it is now irrelevant and not proper and dilatory.
Okay. All right, a motion has been made. Is there a second on it?
What's the motion? I didn't hear.
Oh, the motion was to pass a rule, and I'm assuming you mean effective immediately. The new rule would be that.
No, it's just for now,
Oh,
video stop.
So you're talking a temporary rule to stop broadcasting is what you're
Sorry. Yeah, the
asking
motion
for.
was just to cease all outside communication about this report. That's all for now.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I just objected to the consideration of the question. We have to deal with that first.
Okay. All right.
And please explain what that does in case everybody's unfamiliar.
Okay. So Mr. Jensen has voiced an objection to the consideration of that rule. So that means that we need to have and the rule being suggested is that there be no broadcasting allowed for this session, or for the financial review session. So Mr. Jensen has objected.
No second is required.
What's that?
No second is required.
Oh, no second is required.
And it's not debatable.
And it's not
other than him
debatable.
explaining
So
himself.
This is, thank you, Mr. President. All right, so this is a simple yes or no vote on Mr. Jensen's objection to the motion. So all those supporting.
And it's 2/3.
And it is 2/3, okay. All those supporting Mr. Jensen's objections, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. No.
Are you in doubt?
Yeah, I'm in doubt, but I hate to do this to you guys, but I think we need to do a count. So all those supporting Mr. Jensen's objections, please rise, and then Matt, Ryan,
You can do a standing vote first.
Jackie stands, I'm standing.
Mr. Chairman, can you please repeat the question?
The question is, those in supporting Mr. Jensen's objection to the motion to stop broadcasting on this meeting, which would mean that we would not be able to vote on Holly's motion. So if you support Matthew Jensen's objection, please stand. All right, and then Ryan and Matt Clifford, are you back there still? Are you in the hallway?
No.
All right, and then
You can just do it by standing and have them sit and have the others, and then if you're still in doubt, you can take a count. We don't have to count.
Okay.
Yeah, have you sit, have the nose rise.
Okay.
And if you're still in doubt,
All right. So I'm
safe counting.
I'm being corrected. We may not need to count. Okay. All right. We have this. All right. All those in favor may be seated. Those opposed, please rise. Okay. That kind of removes all doubt. All right. Mr. Jensen's objections are withheld, so that motion will not be considered. Yes, it's your
Mr.
recommendation.
Chairman, point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Prior to the resignation of the previous executive committees, an independent audit was done by Chipro, Ronnie, and Morana, the same company that does the auditing taxes for the state GOP party. That report was given to the secretary for distribution to the central committee, yet was never distributed. I would like to petition to have that document entered into the minutes, and, if allowed, passed out to the central committee for transparency.
That's not true, that was passed out.
I have over 100
That, I'm being informed that that was passed out. When? Which meeting was that?
I don't have a specific meeting, but I know for certain that it was passed out, so that's
The
not
last
a
year.
statement.
Yeah, that meeting, that
That was
report was
passed
passed
out.
out last year.
Mr. Chairman, I have multiple reports from PCs that stated that they never received this report.
That's not true.
I would like this to
Oh,
be put.
she may have those that didn't receive it, but it was passed out.
It was passed out, it's not, it's not valid.
All right.
They didn't get it, tell them.
There's been a motion made to allow the Chickbro report to be passed out.
That's not personal privilege.
Oh, there's a point of personal privilege.
For transparency.
What I'm being told is that that was actually emailed out, so if it was not received, then there's another issue going on there. So, on that case, we're gonna go ahead and move forward with the financial report. And the Chickbro report, I believe, is covered in the financial review, so.
There's a copy in it, so just for clarification, there's a copy of the report in the financial report.
No, okay, am I right on that, Brian? No, is it referenced in there? It is referenced in there, so.
So sir, would it not be good to have the actual report since it is referenced? Or
No, no,
You need to override this.
no, all right? All right, now that we've taken care of that, Mr. Merrill, would you come up and give the report, please? Thank you.
Good evening. I don't intend to keep you here till 9:30, so I appreciate the opportunity to be on the committee, to work with the chairman, Vicki McIntyre, and with our treasurer, Sue Hoffer. We drew straws. I drew the tall straw, and that's what I'm giving the report. At the front table, there were a number of copies of a Financial Review Committee recap. I'm going to read that as my report, which summarizes the findings of the full report. I have a copy, the signed official copy of the full report for the chairman. And right as I walked into the meeting, I sent an electronic copy of a scanned version of that signed report to the chairman and to the secretary, so they have that in their email. As we had talked in a previous setting, and as the motion was made a few months ago, the financial review that we did was responsive to two things. One, to a complaint filed to the state party from members of this body, and two, when a chairman and treasurer resign, it triggers an automatic financial review. Instead of doing two financial reviews, we worked comprehensively to do one review for both, to respond to both needs or both requests. And that's what I'll present here today. So firstly, we were tasked to determine if the original, is that on? No, I'm not gonna, mine has notes. We were tasked to determine if the original complaint from the 17 precinct committeemen in the ACRCC was valid. Secondly, to determine the balance in all financial accounts is accurate and reported to the Secretary of State, and what was reported to the Secretary of State was accurate. And third, to provide confidence to the members of this body that the financial records of our organization are being reported correctly. So in our review, 46 findings were identified, specific instances and cases and issues. Many were due to lack of internal controls, and here's a summary of those items. Yeah, you can read that, okay. All right. Firstly, documents are missing from our records, and most official forms were not appropriately signed by the requester or the approver for both for expense disbursements. QuickBooks was not used as intended, meaning that transactions were downloaded from a bank register, resulting in the incorrect revenue and expense being recorded on the Secretary to the Secretary of State. I can explain that a little bit more later. Documents are missing. The previous administration scanned some physical documents into computer files and then discarded the originals. Reconciliation documents are also missing from the bank account reconciliations. Antidote fees were not recorded properly or correctly in QuickBooks. They do not match what's been reported to the Secretary of State in most cases, in many cases I should say. Deposits were not timely. Oftentimes checks appear to have been held for months before being deposited, including donations from donors. There are assets, physical assets missing. Inventories of the Western Idaho Fair for 2022 and 2023 were completed. Sales documents for over half of the dates of the fair cannot be balanced with what was recorded as cash or credit card sales. And I understand the previous treasurer, Mr. Bender, has shared with his body the difficulty in tracking fair transactions. But nonetheless, they didn't reconcile, they didn't match. Many fiscal policies and procedures were not followed. The bylaws in some cases were not followed. There were 41 of 42 expense transactions for 2022 and 2023 greater than $1,000 with no evidence of a competitive bid. 27 of those totaling $145,000 were in 2022 and 14 in 2023 totaling almost $50,000. Idaho State sales tax was paid on merchandise for resale at the 2023 Western Idaho Fair unnecessarily or incorrectly. So there was an issue with that. That was something that Vicki McIntyre specialized on or focused on in her part of the review. And then a federal checking account was created in June of 2023. The reconciliation showed a transfer of funds from the Mountain West checking account to the FEC. Required filings have not been filed timely. There's an issue outstanding with the FEC that we're trying to resolve related to the opening of that account and the funding of that account. This is not all the findings, this is just a few, a summary of the findings. The full report includes specific details of checks that were written for the wrong amounts or transactions that were reported set differently on the Secretary of State website than they were in the books. donors that weren't, checks that were written by donors but that were attributed to different people on the Secretary of State website, things like that. There were 28 recommendations from our committee that are contained in the full report. Here's just a summary of those. Firstly, many of the changes needed, many of the recommendations are for changes needed in the fiscal policies and procedures to implement internal controls. So there were a number of instances where we didn't have a process appropriate to adequately record and account for transactions. The fair would be a good example where we get through the fair by the grace of God, then it's a mess for months and it's unreconcilable. Several of the recommendations are for bylaws changes that need to be incorporated, and also changes to the fiscal, also the need to incorporate fiscal responsibilities of all members. There's we need one of the recommendations to implement a refund policy. There were refunds given that were questionable in nature, and there's no explicit refund policy. It would behoove us to be more explicit with that. There are recommendations to issue corrected 1099. The 1099s that were issued don't match the expenses. There are very few of those, but they need to be corrected. The recommendation to establish a web presence for the ACRCC. I'm drawing a blank on this one. This is
because we still do not have control of our own website.
Okay, so this is because we don't, the current, the body currently does not have access or does not have control of the county party website. That's still in control of the previous chairman. So we have not been able to resolve that issue, and that he's been unwilling to cooperate. So, to my knowledge. There's a recommendation to file appropriate IRS reports. A 990 report is due for 2022 by March of last year, and the report for 23 is due by March of this year. A recommendation to work with the Idaho Sales Tax Commission to audit payments made. The committee believes that there were incorrect amount of sales tax paid. And then the last one on this summary is a recommendation to follow up with the FEC to clear up incorrect filing documents and take the actions necessary regarding the federal bank account that was set up for the federal expenses for the, what's his name? The fellow Burgess Owens from Utah. So, the full report, just a few other comments. The full report, we were tasked to review back to the beginning of 2022 to the present. In that, that's not right. From the beginning of 2022 to October 5th, which is the resignation, 5th or 6th, the resignation date of the previous officers. We took into consideration all documents and any documentation that was given to us, electronic, physical assets, correspondence, receipts, everything we could find. We did our best. We did our best to get cooperation from the previous treasurer and the previous officers through their attorney. And the full report is 8 pages with a few additional recommendations afterwards regarding policy stuff. It's not findings from the report. And that is with the chairman, and I believe it will be distributed to the entire membership of this body. But I didn't want to print it out and give it here at this point. It wasn't my place to do. The chairman of our committee asked it, but do it this way. In our report, we do not make any recommendations towards individuals. Specifically, we make recommendations on findings. So it's mostly related to so bylaws, the policy documents, internal controls, protection of personal information, errors that are in the bylaws that haven't been corrected that should be, and then recommendations to shore things up so that we don't violate the bylaws and the policies in the future. With that, I know that leaves some of you wanting more, and some of you have had enough. So I will stand for questions, as long as the chairman will let me. So, do you want me to call on people?
Yeah,
I'm bad with names, so I'm going to point. Laurel.
Everybody knows.
That's her right there.
Yes.
First of all, I want to thank the committee. I know you guys put a lot of time in, so thank you for your time, because this was not time you got paid for. We appreciate your service, okay? I have a question. I noticed that during the report that was given previously by the treasurer that she mentioned these refunds, and I noticed that in your recommendations, you talk about, establishing and implementing a refund policy. Wanted to know if you would speak to the timing of this refund, because I know I've been a member of this committee for a number of years. I've received a lot of annual reports, and I've seen a lot of them. To my best recollection, I don't recall previously an issue where we were giving refunds back to people. And so I wondered if you could speak to, when you as a committee looked at this, the timing of these refunds that occurred, and if you could speak more directly about that.
I will do my best to answer questions. I did not do all the review by myself. So if it's something that I feel like I have first-hand knowledge of, I'll try to answer and be responsive. If not, then I will not. So the question is a little bit vague, but I'll do my best. There are a few things regarding refunds that come to mind. One is that there was an issue when refunds were issued about how it was reported back to the Secretary of State. So if a refund was issued in October of last year, sometimes it was reported in January of last year, because that's when the donation was made. And I'm not an expert on the Secretary of State website. There were some things like that that were confusing to me. Right before the resignation of the officers, there was kind of a flood of refunds right before our, and I, for example, because we talked about it already, Mr. Clyde was refunded a certain amount in October, and that was for expenses that were generally incurred in May, so that I recall. And he provided some version of documentation, some receipts, some invoices, and then some documents that didn't have, that weren't sufficient in my opinion. But there seemed to be a rush at the end to withdraw, to be reimbursed for expenses in the months of late September and early October. There were refunds along the way, and there were a few smaller refunds that were given to donors. One donor paid twice at the auction and was refunded, the $750 that she accidentally overpaid. So, yes, Mike Hahn.
So, did you guys do any analysis on the time lag between when some of the funds were refunded and when they were originally donated? Is there a range?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably over a year on some, yeah. We looked at, as best we could, we looked at when the donation was made, for what purpose it was made. For most of the refunds, not the reimbursed expenses, but refunds to donors, I would say in September and October, those were generally for donations that were made for events that had already occurred and that were many, many months prior to the donation was many, many months prior to the request for reimbursement.
Follow-on question, was there any investigation or phone calls to these donors to ask them why, let's say hypothetically, if somebody donated money a year ago, what would motivate them to ask for a refund of their donation?
Yeah, that is not something, I want to read from the full report. I think there's two findings on refunds that are, I'll just read the language. This is all that, I don't know about phone calls because that's not something we were given to review, but there's hearsay, I'm not going to share that from folks in Ada and Canyon counties, but things that we actually saw, there's evidence of. There were refunds made in September and October 2023 by way of the executive board members directly contacting large donors suggesting they ask for their money back. For example, emails from board members to several donors suggest amounts that they should ask for. These emails used similar wording and the refunds resulted in $10,950. Also, large expenditures were created in September to reimburse executive board members for expenses from May 2023. So in the information that we were provided, we could deduce that much factually. Yes, Megan?
Mr. Merrill, were any of the reimbursements for the receipts that were done, were they not given in May, June, or July, but they were just reimbursed late because they had attached
Repeat the question.
documentation, correct?
Would you ask that again? I'm not sure I caught it
So
all.
you said that for the reimbursements, that the money was given in October, September, right, September and October, for things that were accrued in May. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
And was there documentation to coincide with those reimbursements?
Like I said before, in some cases it was sufficient documentation, like a receipt. In other cases it was insufficient, in my opinion. And I personally did review some of those.
And Mr. Merrill, was there any other events or occurrences in the month of August or September that may have been a cause that the people may have looked at as to why people would then withdraw their money?
I don't know, that wasn't part of our review. I do remember the chairman, I personally remember him threatening that if certain things happened that his donors would withdraw their money.
And did he say why, sir?
If the things happened, then they would withdraw their money. I don't remember the details of it. That's not part of our review, that's just what I remember. So we weren't asked to review that.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah, Dave Ritchie, 1716. Not having a copy here of all of your recommendations, I was wondering if you had considered in reviewing and revising the policies and procedures, if you've looked at the publication, I think it's called Accounting Best Practices, and whether or not there's anyone in our group here who might have CPA knowledge and be willing to offer recommendations pro bono.
Yeah, that's a great question. In the recommendations section, there are a number of policy recommendations related to that. One is to require any new treasurer to receive training in QuickBooks so that they at least have a basic proficiency. There are recommendations to shore up the financial reporting and the financial record keeping. So those are definitely in order. There are accountants in this group. So and I'm financial. I mean, I know there are folks who have volunteered to help with some of the accounting and bookkeeping. Yes.
Brian, sorry, on that question?
No, you can't answer. Sorry. Yes.
Ron, 601.
Yes.
You make reference in your sheet
yes.
to expenses over a certain amount not being subject to open bid.
Yes.
Was there, at the time of those expenses, was there a policy or bylaw in place requiring purchases over a specified amount going through an open bid process.
Yes, so in I believe it was 2021, the financial pulse.
2020.
2020 or 2021.
That's
A few
the
summers ago when we were meeting in Star, there was a fiscal policy and procedures document that was approved by the body, almost unanimously, maybe unanimously, and that includes in it the requirement that anything over $1,000. There were a few transactions that I did not include in that total. That we did not include in that total. That were obviously not biddable. You know, if we had a contract to pay somebody for an employment contract, we don't have to bid that every month. But the transactions that I shared in that summary were the transactions that could have been bid but weren't. At least it appeared as such. Yes, sir.
Tom Moore, 1413. So when we were getting financial reports each month that they were holding deposits back, they were financially lying to us, right? If they held deposits back and didn't show us the deposits on the bank report, wasn't they giving us fraud reports?
So that's one way to view it probably. I think, let me talk to that.
Can I just address one thing? Because of the sensitive nature of this, we want to make sure that what we say is very careful. So, and we do not want to impugn motive on anything. Rather than saying, were they lying, it would be better to address it as, were these accurate? Because we can't assume that we know what's in anybody's heart at any one moment. So I just want to address that really quick and say this is part of what I was talking about, where we have to be really careful with how we talk about it, because we do not want to create unnecessary angst. Thank you. So yes. So in this case,
so let me talk to a few points that are related to that. So whether or not there was intent to, malicious intent to lie, that's not something you can determine by reviewing the financial documents necessarily. Deposits is generally a donation, and so there's no incentive to hold on to a deposit, and there's no incentive to deposit it late, or to report that you raised less money than you did. So I don't think that's were they accurate? There's lots and lots of instances where specific transaction checks were written for the wrong amount. Receipts didn't match what was written, what was the check that was written. The donor in the SOS, Secretary of State website, it doesn't match the donor in QuickBooks. Donors were combined, donors were separated. It really comes down to just really sloppy bookkeeping. And a disregard for the policies and procedures and bylaws we have in place. So another example, there were 242 expenses or reimbursement requests that did not have a properly signed expense request form or reimbursement request form. So in all of the documents that I reviewed for 2022 and 2023 that I personally reviewed, there was one reimbursement request form that had one signature from the submitter, not from the approver, and there was one receipt that had been signed by an approver, but the form wasn't signed. So in all the documents that I reviewed, there was blatant disregard for the process we had in place. There's a lot of excuses and reasons, and there might be some justifications, but when it comes down to it, there were no signatures on there was not one form that was properly filled out for a 2-year period. So is that malicious? I don't think so. I think it's just lazy or sloppy or ignorant or untrained or whatever you want to call it. So we didn't find money stolen. We didn't find missing money necessarily, as was reported in the report from, we reviewed the Chigbro report. Let me clarify something there. The Chigbro accounting firm was hired without the consent of the body to do an audit that wasn't requested by the body. They reviewed 50 transactions, only 50, that's it, to see if those 50 transactions were recorded properly in the books. In our review, we found one where the totals didn't even match. The amount of the receipts did not match the amount in the books of one of the transactions Chigbo reviewed. I'm not saying they did a bad job, because you can miss stuff. They did a very small spot check, and yes, those 50 transactions, they said it was sufficient. And in the end, our previous chairman and treasurer got the bank balances to match by the grace of God. But along the way, there were a lot of paths that went a lot of different directions. And if you go back and read the transactions, which we did as best we could, every transaction, every entry that was a donation or an expense, and every piece of documentation, electronic or paper, you'll understand the findings that we found. Yes.
So to clarify what you just said, auditors normally do a sample of transactions. You didn't do a sample, you looked at every one?
We started with the sample and decided that we needed to review all the transactions from 22 and 23.
So it was 100% review?
We didn't do an audit, we did a review. Yeah, we did 100% review. Well, 100% what we had. So. We had everything in the books, we had everything on the SS website, and of the documentation, supporting documentation, probably, and I might be generous, less than 50% had receipts or forms that were filled out properly. So, we can only do so much with what we're given. So, and I don't think it's malicious. I think it was. Well, I don't know. I'm trying not to pass judgment on one way or the other on anybody who participated. Yes. Actually, Greg was up first. Sorry.
So, I have a question about, did the committee address some of the fiduciary responsibilities? So it's my recollection that this body passed the resolution that required us to retain $20,000 in our account in preparation for the upcoming caucus. But despite that mandate from the voters and the members of this body, it does not appear that that was followed. That our accounts were spent below the required minimum that was established by this body at that time. Did the committee in their review address fiduciary responsibilities like that?
So I don't think that specific instance is in the report. There was not money set aside. Yes, there was a vote in the minutes to set that aside, and yes, it wasn't regarded, it was disregarded. I will say that this body directed the former chairman to pay dues on a monthly basis, and the chairman directed the treasurer, which is documented in writing, to disregard that. He didn't say to disregard. He directed the treasurer to only pay $1,000 in dues, even though we directed the chairman, the body directed the chairman to pay the full amount of the dues monthly. And so that was, the documentation showed that. So that's one example. Another example on the other side is that when we directed the dues to be paid in full to bring us current, the treasurer paid the dues in full to bring us current. And that happened, I think, before the motion to reserve $20,000 for the caucus. And most of the refunds were given after that motion was made. So most of the September, October reimbursements. Yes, Laurel and then Cindy.
So, the reason we do these things is because ultimately we have to make an assessment that when these things happen, okay, what happens to us as a body? What is our risk? And so I noticed that you had made this statement about that there were deposits that and sometimes were held and not deposited, for a month or so, okay? And I know that the Secretary of State has certain things that require immediate reporting of those things. Time contributions have to be reported, not held for a month and then all reported at the end of the month. I think that I know when I looked at things, I questioned a clump of time contributions that all came in on, I think, a January 27th date in 2022. So what I'm asking is that as you evaluated this, what kind of risk do we have as a body as a result of this negligence or behavior or whatever we want to call it, that we need to be concerned about, whether we're sitting where the Secretary of State might be in a position to come back and find us, or the FEC. And for those of you, I want to be sure everybody knows that's the Federal Election Commission, okay? I want people to understand that level, because I don't know that everybody knew that. What is some of that risk that we now face of potential, fines? And I bring it to the attention that we just saw a news article a week and a half ago about a $500,000 fine that was fined against the radio stations in regards to the red wave radio program that the previous chairman and the previous chairman of the state had, right? So we know some of these like federal kind of things can be really big fines. And so I want to, can you speak to us about what kind of risk we have now right now?
Yeah, I'm tall, but I'm not that smart. There's not a lot of oxygen up here. I don't know. The answer is I don't know. I'm not an expert on political consequences of the nature that you're talking about. I do know that the consensus of the members of the committee is that the FEC concern is maybe greater than any Secretary of State concern. I know that we've talked with the Secretary of State's office, and they acknowledge that their software sucks, that it was bad and it's a little better now as of the beginning of the year, that there are certain things within their software that cannot be changed. You can't make the balances match, and that's just matter of fact. And I think some of those are resolved in the new build of the software. The Secretary of State's not as concerned with, my understanding is that they're not as concerned as much of who donated as how much was donated. And so if there are errors along the way, I don't think that they necessarily pursue that. I have not done much work with Secretary of State or with the website, but I don't know the legal consequences of sloppy accounting. I don't know some of the consequences of misreporting things accidentally. I think most of this can be resolved. I don't know if there's a ton of risk, but there may be, I'm not sure. Sorry, that's a bad answer.
Brian, can I speak to that a little bit?
Yes, only because you're on the committee. Keep coming up here.
So what I wanted to say about the Secretary of State is that until the end of 2023, their major concern was that you had the reports done on a timely basis, and that any donation over $1,000 was reported within 48 hours. The balances, because of so many issues within their own software that they could physically not fix, was something they were not policing. As we go forward in 2024, we don't know how those have changed. And the biggest issue that we saw in 2023 was that there was a lot of corrections that were made to reports in 2023 that ended up convoluting the balances. And ultimately, we could never balance the actual balances on a monthly basis and the end of 2023. So hopefully those have been corrected with the new software, but we'll see if they are.
Thank you, Sue. Cindy, you were next.
Yeah, I just want a little clarification on the expense transactions. Like, for instance, you have 27 in 2022.
Yes.
And, when I calculate that, I could understand, like, we're in the middle of a rush, we need a lot more flyers to go try to keep some of the voice, and we might not have time to do that. But could you kind of categorize that? Like, what are these expenses that could cost $5,500 each, if you were to break it all down? I mean, what's the categories?
I am sorry, my memory is not that good.
Is there any contribution kind of things?
This is all expenses. So that was all expenses.
And all of them were over 1,000, so.
So
So
that was,
there were a couple really big ones.
yes, 27 really big ones, yeah. They were all over 1,000. So that, to me, that's big.
1,001, and then that would leave you with 144,000 left. So I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah,
Was
I
it a
mean,
huge one like they did?
I think some, I don't know, and I probably shouldn't talk to it, but I think some of them in 2022 were right up at the election. And instead of following our procedures and processes,
So a lot of
they
these-
jumped it and they just, whoever approved them without getting appropriate bids as is prescribed in our bylaws and financial
So
policies.
quite a bit of it could have been publication.
Some of it, yes. Yes, Ben.
So this sounds like a risky question considering we just heard that the balances were difficult to obtain. But at the time of the resignation of the previous administration, or previous executive board, do we know the balance within our account?
So the treasurer, Sue, remind me, was there a discrepancy?
So when we took over.
I'll tell you over the mic after she tells me,
Okay.
because she's digging through
We had a
something.
total of $3,420.19
So there was about $3,400 in the bank account when
in November, the beginning of November.
when she was given access to the books, and
Previous to that.
Back in September, there was $33,700.
so the question is if there was a discrepancy between what we were told we had and what we had.
No.
No, I think that the dollar amounts were correct.
But it is proof positive. We asked for the money to be frozen for $20,000 and that was not done, correct?
No, they're not 20 grand, yeah, it was $3,400, yeah. That was not set aside in reserves. So that motion of the body was disregarded in lieu of other things, which some were expenses and some were reimbursements. I wanna close just where I began, at the beginning of this report. Now it's all bent. So we were asked, or set out to do three things. One, determine if the original complaint from the 17th precinct commitment of this body to the Idaho Republican Party is valid. And our determination of that is that yes, it was found to be valid. In the bigger report, we documented a series of bullet points, 10 or so bullet points, that are of findings that validate the concerns of those precinct committeemen. And a report has been sent to the will be sent after tonight to the Idaho State Republican Party chairman.
It's been received.
Oh, it already has been?
It's been received.
Okay, so Vicki must have sent it recently. So the second thing is to determine if the balance in all financial accounts is accurate and reported to the Secretary of State accurately. As you kind of gathered from what I've shared, we found that the ACRCC financial records do not match what was filed with the Secretary of State filings. The balance matches, but along the way the transactions don't match. In many transactions, tens of transactions. Maybe hundreds, Steve says. Every single purchase at the fair can be recorded as a specific donation, so you get to a lot of transactions, and a big chunk of those that were reported incorrectly had to do with ANADOT fees. So when you pay with ANADOT, there are fees that are applied, and they were applied differently in the books than they were applied on the Secretary of State website. But that was less than half of the transactions that didn't match. The ones concerning to me the most are the ones where donors gave money, and then it was recorded as a different person on the Secretary of State website, or not at all on the Secretary of State website. Or a donor was recorded on the Secretary of State website but isn't in the books. And I don't understand that, I just can't. Maybe that's because of withholding checks for deposits too long and not remembering, I don't know. And then thirdly, to provide confidence to the members of the ACRCC that the financial records of the organization are being reported correctly. That's up to you to determine. I would just say the books, the records, the inventories were found to be not in order, and as a result, rife with errors. And the recommendations that we've made in the full report go a long ways to shore up the policies and procedures, and in some cases the bylaws, and training to try and ensure that we as a body follow the processes that are laid out, so that A, we can have transparency, and B, we can have accurate record keeping, and C, we can have accurate reporting. With that, I'm done.
Thank you, Brian and team. I really appreciate the work you guys put into this to make sure it was fair and accurate. All right, with the financial review out of the way, let's move on to some other stuff. We've checked that there's no old business to take care of, so we are now open for new business. So, Chair recognizes Ben. Oh, yes, thank you for reminding me of that. Just real quick, before we do that, the report does belong to this body, so if you would like a copy of the report, please email the secretary, and she will get that to you. Please be patient, as she may have quite a few to do, and it might take a little bit. So, all right, are we ready?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would recommend that she just email to everybody, just transparency, just send it out to all VCs and alternates. If that's what we're asking for, transparency, let's just do it. She has the list.
Saves her processing a bunch of requests.
What's that? It's still being processed. I appreciate what you're trying to get at, and I'm totally happy to get that to anybody that wants it. But right now, just to give her time to get that process.
When she's ready, just send it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chair, we're skipping over the caucus update.
Oh, you are so right. Thank you for pointing that out. Oh my goodness. Okay, caucus updates. Whew. All right. After we got through that ringer, so we are, as of right now, our facilities have been handled and they are reserved. We've got one outstanding invoice on one of the buildings, on one of the schools, only because of a difference in the way that the Facilitron was set up for one particular school. The rest of this is all getting worked on as we go. So we've got most of the districts, I'm hearing reports that they've got their volunteers. There's still a few that are looking. So if you have people that you know that are interested in getting involved in the political sphere, the caucus is a great place to volunteer and to kind of get a taste of what happens on the inside. So that being said, there are still a lot of things that we have been discussing in the executive board and a lot of things we are still working on at the moment.
Can I
Mr. Bender
address that? Because I've continued to give reports from the state's position. We've made a couple of changes. The postcards will not be mailed to every voter. They'll be mailed to every household. That will save us about $40,000. We have $50,000 that is still unbudgeted. That totals $90,000. We have 3 candidate appearance fees in the budget to send back $75,000. My gut tells me we won't see more than one if he comes. We may pocket all $75,000. And if that's the case, we will have lots of money left over to reimburse county expenses. That means that Sue is going to have to work with each of the captains, and I would ask the captains to please, as you buy stuff, keep the receipts. Keep the receipts, total them up, list what it was for, provide them to Sue, and we will get those submitted from the county to the state. It probably will not be till after the caucus. And we'll get them all totaled up, and I'm hoping that everything's going to be covered in full. I can't promise that, but it does look like we're gonna have more cash than expected at the state level to reimburse the counties.
What do we need receipts for?
So that I can list your in-kind contribution, because you're not getting a check for that question.
What's a receipt?
Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Point of personal privilege, just
Yes.
quick update from the state office. I just want you guys to know the state office has been working very, very hard. And currently I took possession of 312,000 ballots to elect our next nomination for President of the United States yesterday. And so we got those in. We're expecting all the poll books for you to use at your caucuses within the next couple of days. Those are under print right now. And all of your signage for all of the caucuses have been printed and are ready to be picked up when we get ready to do the kits. So we are moving right along, and things are looking good, and we've had great volunteers like Sandy and stuff, people coming in and helping us. And we may need some help putting caucus kits together, so if you want to volunteer, give me a call and let me know, okay?
And the ballots are under camera,
The
being
ballots
watched.
are secured, and they are on 24-hour surveillance. They are very secure. Very good.
Great
I might
news.
pour that in the garage.
Yeah. It's your course, right? All right. On to new business. The floor is now open for new business, and the chair recognizes Ben Chafis.
Do it. Yeah. Yes, if you would. Well, actually, you just need to make a
Okay,
motion.
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution that's already been given to the secretary.
Okay. Okay. Explain what the resolution is about.
Resolution or motion?
I mean a motion. I meant to say motion.
Oh, motion. Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes.
All right.
Take a motion.
My motion is as follows. I move that the Central Committee shall instruct the Ada County GOP Chairman, that's you, Thad, to create a subcommittee consisting of at least 3 registered Republican electors, hereafter referred to as the Refund Subcommittee or the Subcommittee, whose purpose shall be the investigation of past refunds of donations to the Ada County Central Committee. The Refund Subcommittee shall contact donors to the Ada County GOP who received refunds in calendar year 2023, and the subcommittee shall seek to answer the following questions for each donor that received a refund. What information were you told about your donation to the Ada County GOP? What information were you told about your refund from the Ada County GOP? If you were subsequently asked to donate to the Idaho Majority Club, what information were you told about your donation to that organization? The chairman shall identify the members of this subcommittee not later than 5 p.m. MST on Friday, February 9th, 2024. The subcommittee shall select a chairman from among themselves by majority vote, and that chairman shall deliver an interim status update or a final report at each subsequent regular monthly meeting of the Ada County Republican Central Committee until their final report has been submitted. The refund subcommittee shall be dissolved after the submission of their final report.
I second.
There you go. Very detailed, and we already know this. Okay. All right. The motion is on the table to create a subcommittee for, let's see, we should call it the refunds subcommittee. The floor is now open for debate, either for or against. If you would like to debate for, please come forward. And against?
Not debate, I have a question for the mover. Is there any particular reason why it's written as elector and not qualified elector? It's okay if you don't know.
I'm happy for that change to be made.
Well, then I move.
Unanimous consent.
What?
Unanimous consent.
I was getting there.
Oh,
Well, then, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I move for, I'm asking for unanimous consent to modify the motion to say qualified electors in every instance.
All right. Is there any objection to that motion? All right. Seeing none, that motion is accepted. So the language shall be adjusted in every elector, every place where it references electors, it will be called qualified electors. Okay. All right. The floor is now open for debate. So anyone in favor of this motion, please come and stand on this side. Anybody against, please stand on this side. I see no debate, so in that case, I call the question. Unless Daniel's gonna run.
I might be in the middle.
Yeah. All right. So seeing no debate, we call the question. All those in favor of creating the subcommittee, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. All right, the ayes most definitely have it. All right. First order of business taken care of. Is there any other new business? The chair, right, Alexander, sorry.
That's okay. Alexander Van 11-2210. Mr. Chairman, I move to direct the treasurer to file an inquiry with the Federal Elections Commission to request help in correcting the record of the reports and amendments filed by our former treasurer, Dave Lister, between June 2023 and October 2023.
All right. Sorry, I'm making notes. Is there a second?
Laurel Morgan, 2008.
Okay.
I'm gonna need a copy of that.
Yep.
And I am writing this down so I make sure that I track this in case we get into sub-motions here. All right. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and a second.
This is her motion.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So I have a motion on the floor and a second to request the treasurer to request help from the FEC to get the records corrected. All right, is there any debate for or against? The chair recognizes, I'm sorry, I can't see.
Kirsten.
Oh, Kirsten, there you are, okay.
I couldn't hear the.
I can't hear. 88.
Repeat the motion.
Oh, okay, so the motion, I'll just read it right here so that you can get it. Move to direct the treasurer to file an inquiry, to file an inquiry with the Federal Elections Commission to request help in correcting the record of the reports and amendments filed by Treasurer Dave Lister between June 2023 and October 2023. So that motion has been made and seconded. The floor is now open for debate. Mr. Bender.
Again, since I'm parliamentarian tonight, neither for nor against, but this county report is closely tied to the state standing with the FEC for the state party. So I will be working with the treasurer if this passes in making sure that the state's risks are properly addressed, even though it's not included in the motion.
Okay. All right, is there any debate for or against? Any? Yes.
Is there a roundabout, will this cost us?
Okay, the question is, will this cost us? And the answer is no, it will not cost us anything because we are requesting help from the FEC. And generally, if we're trying to do the right thing, they're very helpful. Generally. It is government, so we never know. All right. Okay. All right, any debate for or against? All right, seeing none, call the question. All those in favor of adopting this motion to direct the treasurer to file an inquiry with the Federal Elections Commission to request help in correcting the record of the reports and amendments, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. All right, the ayes have it. All right, floor is now. Oh. Never mind, Colette was asking for that piece of paper back so she can track it. All right, the chair recognizes Mike Hahn.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have the opportunity to come up and introduce a bylaw amendment / addition, if I may.
Yes, you're welcome to come forward. And just a reminder on procedure on this, the bylaw can be talked about in this meeting. It'll be introduced. And then next meeting, so in March, we will actually have a vote on adopting this bylaw change.
Bad.
Mike Hahn, PC 2017. Most of you, or some of you may have grabbed a copy of this bylaw edition that is titled Article 11, Ada County Republican Central Committee Candidate Endorsement Process. You can read that and, when you get home, and I think Colette will email that out as well. But basically, in our constitutional republic, the best government comes from
bottom-up representation rather than top-down. The precinct committeeman is the closest elected official to the voter. According to the Idaho Republican State Party Rules, Article 4, Section 1, County Central Committee may determine the political affiliation of candidates filing or declaring any intent to file as Republican candidates for county political offices and may endorse Republican candidates for the respective positions. It is one of the duties of the Ada County Republican Central Committee to find, vet, endorse, and support Republican candidates. This document is a description that I've written of the Ada County Republican Central Committee process for recruiting, evaluating, and endorsing candidates for state legislative, county, and local municipal races and ballot questions. This process covers Republican primary elections and nonpartisan general elections. Under no circumstances will the races for precinct committeemen be considered part of this process. So I ask you to review this bylaw change, and we can vote on it next time around in March. Thank you. Yes, question?
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Our bylaws not supposed to go to bylaw committee for approval of any bylaws to the central committee?
No, they are not. Article 10 of the bylaws, please read them.
Excuse me?
It says that the amending the bylaws are for the sole committee of the.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, could you please?
They do not have to go through the bylaws committee. Our bylaws state that they can be introduced in one session and then talked about or voted on in the next meeting. So this is only for discussion. The bylaw will now be given to the secretary. She will make sure that it is emailed out to the body so that they can review before March's meeting. So that is the proper procedure.
Mr. Chairman, point of query. So we no longer have a bylaws committee?
No, we do not.
Thank you.
Sorry. Any questions?
Well, actually, questions will go.
Yeah, questions will go for next time, but okay.
I got a quick question about this. It sounds like a good idea, Daniel Murphy, 1804. But let's say you have a vetting process, okay? And let's say you don't select your favorite candidate that's supposedly the top conservative, but the other person is still in the race. Would the legislative district chair be allowed to berate, harass, excoriate, slander another person that just decides to want to stay in the race?
So that one will be discussed in next month's meeting. So it will be for us to consider and debate on in that one. So I would encourage you to have your discussion ready for next month. But
I'll be here.
I appreciate that.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you. Yes, Mr. President.
Also, any member can submit a question to Mike about it between now and the next meeting, and he may be able to answer some of their questions about his language.
Yes. Just for those who didn't catch that, you are able to contact Mike and ask him questions about that in the meantime between now and March when we debate this. All right. The chair recognizes Phil Reynolds.
Mr. Chair, Phil Reynolds, 1412. I'd like to come forward. I did submit a copy of my motion to the secretary already.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Ada County Republican Central Committee direct the chairman to appoint an investigations committee to look into the matter of the FCC ruling relative to the Red Wave radio show hosted by former State Republican Party Chairman Tom Luna and former Ada County Republican Central Committee Chairman Victor Miller to ensure that the Ada County Republican Central Committee has no exposure from this decision and to recommend potential courses of legal action if they determine that the Ada County Republican Central Committee is exposed.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. Okay, if I have a copy of that.
Oh, you gave one there. I will take that so that I can, is there?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Jackie Davidson, 1614, I second that.
Okay, so we have the motion and a second. The motion is to move the Ada County Central, let's just say ACRCC for ease of use here. Move that the ACRCC direct the chairman to appoint an investigations committee to look into the matter of the FCC ruling relative to the Red Wave radio show and to ensure that the RCC has no exposure from this decision, and to recommend potential courses of legal action if it is determined that we have exposure. So that is the motion. It has been seconded. The floor is now open for debate. All those in favor of the motion, please stand over here. All those opposed, stand over here.
Question, how much might that cost?
Okay, your point of question is well taken, and I appreciate the budget consciousness. Forming the investigative committee will actually cost nothing. There will be nothing there, and really, I believe the point of this motion is to make sure that we don't have any extra costs that come back at us later. So, if there is debate in favor of the motion, please come over here. Debate against, please stand over here. The chair recognizes Matthew Jensen in support.
As precinct committeeman, one of our first duties is, of course, to represent the Republican voters of your precinct, and I've had no fewer than one of three such voters, one of which is in my immediate family. My father, he connected a couple of dots and wanted to know what the heck is going on with all this. So that's why I am in favor of doing all of this. And as we said before, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I don't want things to get dark.
All right, is there any debate against this motion? The chair recognizes Megan Ridgely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the newspaper reports will show you, there were no funds from Ada County Central Committee that were used in any way, shape, or form.
Louder.
As the radio reports will tell you, the monies that were used for Red Wave Radio were from the state GOP party, not from Ada County Central Committee. The fine that went across the radio stations was not a fine towards the people that put on the show, but for the radio stations. It was not just one radio station. From my understanding from reading the article is that it was numerous radio stations across the country, I believe over 20, that did not have the correct political disclosures. The $500,000 fine was for the radio station system, not for this one entity. I believe it may be a waste of time and energy for something that the newspapers have already reported. Thank you.
All right, any more debate in favor? Mr. Chaffetz?
So if, in fact, what the previous debater just said is true, then we have nothing to lose by looking into this. If sunlight is the best disinfectant, which I totally agree, then it will come out that no money came out of the Ada County Central Committee and the investigation proves no wrongdoing. If it does, however, prove some wrongdoing, then this is absolutely necessary and we should just look into it. I see nothing wrong with that and it costs us nothing.
Any debate against? Are you on the against it? Okay. So you are for? Okay. And I see nobody debating against. All right, go ahead.
I just wanted to remind the body that over the course of the last year or so, there have been a number of times where our body has been implicated in the red wave radio. I want to remind you that last year there was a mailer that was sent out as a fundraiser, and in that fundraising mailer, it took credit on behalf of the Ada County Central Committee as having a radio program, okay? So anything that potentially could reflect poorly on this body, that reflection has already been made. I know that there were a number of times on our Ada County Facebook page where one of two moderators specifically referred back to the radio station as if it was part of the Ada County Central Committee. So I think it warrants our careful consideration to be sure that we dot the I's and cross the T's, that we are totally transparent, which happens to be in our code of ethics and our bylaws, okay?
that we take our due diligence right now to be sure that we get things right, and we start a fresh page right now with the I's dotted and the T's crossed.
All right, any debate against? All right, Mr. Reynolds, are you debating for it? All right, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that questions were asked many times about this radio program, and those questions were simply swept under the rug. It's clear that the station is liable. They've been fined. They were just tagged with a $500,000 fine. But I don't know what the risks are that this committee faces. I believe it would be prudent for us to do our due diligence to ensure that we have no exposure.
All right.
In response to the person that spoke in opposition, no, we probably have zero risk from the FCC because we don't deal in communications. We don't own a radio station yet. But that was a two-stage process. It involves both the FCC and the Federal Elections Commission, which we're very closely aligned with. We have set up a federal account. It was paid for to the station solely out of state funds. No county money went to pay for the show, but the county claimed credit in our quota at the time for having aided by hosting, with our former chairman co-hosting the program. The FEC is probably still looking into all of the unreported in-kind contributions from the times that candidates were put on the air. The Secretary of State may follow on that, may not, but they may follow on that for any state candidates that were put on the air. That's the type of exposure that's being talked about. And we should make sure that if there's anything that we are required to report, that that report is filed, if not timely, at least that it's filed.
Chair recognizes Brian Davidson.
This committee is formed, we'll be able to look into whether or not individual candidates will be required to file disclosure of Secretary of State sunshine reports as opposed to just
That's something I believe that we could set in the rules of the committee, of what they're, because the main thing is to make sure that the ACRCC does not have any exposure.
We should protect our candidates too.
But we should make sure that candidates are aware as much as possible so that they're not exposed as well. Chair recognizes Mr. Murphy.
I'm in support of this motion, but I do have a question. What if the radio station files an appeal on the amount that was assessed as a fine, and they try to say, well, you know, the county GOP had a little hand in this too. So I think it's important to get all this out and do the report, just to be safe, because $500,000 is a big fine, and they might file an appeal.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I would just refer Mr. Murphy to go back and look at actually the paperwork that was filed by the FEC as public record that talks about that the stations entered into an agreement with the FCC for this fine. They understood what they were signing to and had agreed to that did stop the FCC portion of their investigation with the fine that they accepted. So, and remember that fine is because of the action of the radio station and their lack of reporting of the contract that was signed by Mr. Luna and Chairman Miller with the radio station that was supposed to have been made a public record and was not. So if you go back and look at the FCC report, it's very clear about what that is, and it would not pertain to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other debate? All right, then we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to create a investigations committee to look into the matter of the FCC ruling relative to the Red Wave radio show and to make sure that we have no exposure from this decision, and to recommend potential courses of legal action. We determine there is exposure. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. All right. The floor is open. Oh yes, let me hand that over to you. The floor is open for new business, and Chair recognizes Megan Ridgely.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, since we are in legislative session, that our state committeemen and state committee women give us some reports at our meeting as to the ongoings of the legislature. Thank you.
All right. A motion was made that the state committee man and state committee woman be prepared to present a report of the ongoing at the legislature in the next session, which will be in March's meeting. Is there a second for that motion?
Cindy Eason, 2307, I second that.
Okay, you get that? All right. Any debate for or against that motion? All right. Seeing none, call to question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
Maybe.
I think maybe it's an option here. Let's do, just because there's just enough question. Those in favor, please stand. All right. Those opposed, please stand. Oh, mercy. I do need to get a count on this one. I apologize. See here. Is that?
Point of order.
Yes.
I would like to know, so what kind of report would this be? Would this be like the one that the previous woman, state committee woman never gave us? But I'm just trying to figure out what
Yes.
they never got to, anything like that.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer that.
Yes, go ahead.
We have not had a committee man or committee woman report. I think that we would be lapse in looking at, since we are in legislature, to ask for those reports from our committee men and our committee women. Part of their job, I don't see why it's such a big deal.
Mr. Chairman, a quick count when people stood was 24. Rough count, not accurate, but close. Less, against, that would indicate that we may be short of quorum, and I suggest the absence of quorum.
I was just informed by the secretary that that is indeed the case, that we are now, we've now dropped below the quorum requirements. So in that case, there is no new business that can be done.
You can only move to adjourn.
Yes.
So, I'm not sure what it's called, but does that mean the other motions are no longer valid, the ones that were done before this one?
No, according to the secretary, we still had quorum at that point. She's been keeping track of when people leave, because they get the counts back at the table. This.
Mr. Chairman, could we get an update from the attendees of the Turning Point event?
Mr. Chairman, the only order in business now is a motion to adjourn because we don't have a quorum.
Yeah, the only motion that can be made now and accepted would be for adjournment. And a report would have to go onto the agenda and be approved. But we'd be happy to put that on the.
We have time. We
agenda
could
for-
stay and talk about it after we adjourn.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Point of personal privilege?
Yes.
Before we would potentially entertain the motion to adjourn, would it be appropriate at least to give people an opportunity for any announcements that might be made?
No.
Yes.
According to our parliamentarian, no. We cannot. All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Wait. Yes.
Graham Patterson, 1612. I move we adjourn.
There you go.
That's seconded.
All right. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. All right. We are adjourned.
Sorry.